of the stores, 10% get them right the first couple of days, 25% get them right in a week, 50% get them right in 2 weeks, the other 50% never get them right. And so he says, well, we're taking the company plane, we're going to go to Toledo, St. Louis, Topeka, Kansas, Sacramento, and San Francisco. He always went west because he could pick up, what, 3 more hours in the day. So we went to all these stores, and I was floored. I was only with the company a couple months, and I kind of figured out why they were so successful. Every store across that country was a cookie cutter of that store in Northland, Ohio. Exactly the same. And the execution was unbelievable. Now, if you don't think the fact that he was flying the plane into all these stores and everybody knew that he did that whenever he asked this to be done, that wasn't part of why they got it done, that was a huge part of it. But the main thing was he had put up this system because he saw a lack of execution. When he first took over the company, he put up this system where he had 5 people in this department called store control, store communications, And what they did is they tracked every single paperwork mistake that every single store did, whether it was a payroll action form, or it was a markdown, or if it was a receipt and adjustment record. Every single paperwork they did, and they tracked every single mistake and assigned it to the store manager, the district manager, and the regional manager. And they had been doing that for about a year, and they got it down to the point where they had less than one mistake per store per month in all the paperwork they produced in the store. That's when I learned what execution was possible. And that company was the #1 company stock to own on the New York Stock Exchange for the decade of the 80s. It went up 12 times. So if you invested $100, you'd have $1,200 at the end of the decade. That's just one story. I can give you lots more, but I'm out of time. Integrity. Honesty, as I said, was important. You have to be a person of your word. It's not just don't steal from me, or don't do something illegal. It's being a person of your word. When you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. And that's what integrity is all about. Because I could always, as an executive, I could make decisions if I had all the information, and I had the information from what was going on accurately. And the mistakes that I made were when people told me information that wasn't right. And then I made the wrong decision. But if I could get the information and people were honest with me, and I could get the right information, then I know that I felt confident that I could make the right decision as to where we needed to go. So I wanted people that were going to be honest with me and could tell me when they screwed up, and they tell me when they did something bad, and sometimes I rewarded people for doing that. I had a guy when we bought a computer system at Galleon's that he said, I think we can go with this. IBM was supposed to, the vendor said we need an IBM computer. He says, I think we can buy this computer from this other person at 1/3 the cost, and I think it'll work. I says, well, the software vendor said it's not going to work. He said, I think I can make it work. So we bought this cheaper computer, we put it in, and we got it 99% to work, but we couldn't quite get it to work. So we ended up having to buy the IBM computer. Well, I gave the guy an award in public to the whole entire organization for taking the chance to try to save the company money. So you got to have integrity, and you got to know honestly, and you give people a chance to be successful, and let them be wrong. Let them be wrong. Working relationships. If I think about the times I've had to really terminate people in my organization, it was either #2 or #3. Because I never had a situation where I'd be so frustrated with the business environment that I couldn't figure out a way to go, a way out. But what made me very uncomfortable and what made me unpleasant in the working environment, what made me go home upset at night, was when the guy down the hall was driving me nuts. And we all know melancholy people. We all know people that are hard to get along with. And I tried to hire people that had what I call a great get-along ability quotient. That they just got along with people, that they were positive, that they were upbeat, that they worked to find a solution and weren't negative and saying, I can't do this, can't do that. You know, would try to jump over other people, had their own motives in mind and not the motives of the entire company. And so to me, working relationships and the ability to work with others is a key to the kind of person I was looking for. And then innovation, creativity. There's no such thing as a status quo in business. If you're maintaining the status quo, you're losing because everybody else is going to knock your socks off. You got to be changing. all the time. And you got to look for that innovative creativity, just like this guy that wanted to do this computer system a little differently. I can remember when we did a new design of the Galleon store, you know, in Columbus, Ohio, and it was our history in the company to not take pictures, not allow people to come and take pictures, because our design of our stores was so unique that we didn't want people to knock us off. So we said, the guys came to me and said, well, we got this climbing wall in the store. Parents want to take pictures of their kids climbing the wall, and we have this rule, you're not supposed to, you know, have pictures in the store. So I thought about it for about 10 seconds, and I said, let them take pictures. And if the competitors come in and take pictures of our store, we're going to be redesigning stores so fast and changing things so fast that it won't matter. Because we're not going to stay with the status quo. We never have and never will. And so Dick's came in, and they took a picture of the footwear department in the store. And we had tried this new footwear design where we had wood everywhere, and we had rocks on the one wall for our hiking boots, and it was a disaster. It didn't work at all. Our footwear sales as a percent of the sales of the store were about half what they were at all the other stores, and we just knew we blew this design. But Dick's came in, took a picture of it, put it in their next 20 stores, and it was a disaster for them. And we changed it the next store we built to have a blue wall. If you remember the Galleon store, they had this blue wall in the back, which contrasted all the white shoes. That was just fantastic, and it doubled sales over the original stores instead of halving them. And so that's where we went to, and Dick's took them so long to change, they had 20 stores with disaster footwear departments, so it ended up being a good decision. Lastly, people development. You know, as I said, as I learned that your success is going to be determined at one point in time by other people, and the people you hire, and the people you work with, and how you motivate them, and how you encourage them, and how you give them an environment where they can best succeed. But a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people don't want to hire people better than them. A lot of people don't want to invest time in their folks to help them to be better at what they do. And there's certain people that want to do that and certain people that don't. And so I always look for people that really had a self-confidence about them, that wanted to hire the best possible people, that would invest in others to help them to be better. And those are the 5 things that I really look for when I used to hire people. To the point where I developed questions pertaining to these things. And then at the end of the interview, if it was really somebody I liked, I went through this list with them. I said, okay, this is what I expect. This is the environment you're going to experience here. So you have to decide whether you want it or not. And I want a fanatical executor. I want a person with integrity. I want somebody that can get along with others and work together as a team. I want somebody that's innovative and creative in how we approach business, and there is no status quo. Always be looking at what's new and hire and develop the best people that you can. And I tell them that. And I'd say, is that an environment you want to work in? And sometimes they'd say no. I'd say, okay, bye. But most of the time, they said, this is the kind of environment I'd like to work in. And then you got to follow it up and have a culture that reflects that in the business that you're in. So I think I'm out of time, so I'll stop there, and we still have time for a few questions. What time is it?
Yeah,
Quarter after?
time for some questions.
Any questions? Anything that... Sure.
Why did you have such a loyalty to your bosses when you were doing your own business work?
Well, I believe in Romans 13. I believe in the authority that Scripture says that He's sovereign God, and He puts people in your path, and sometimes they're not going to reflect His wishes, but our job is to be loyal. And as long as they don't, in the instances I gave you, they told me to do things that were either illegal, incorrect, or immoral. You know, if somebody tells you those things, you have to react against them. But some of your bosses aren't going to be nice. Some of them are going to be very self-centered, and you still, though, I believe, have to be loyal. And in the long run, if you make choices whether you're going to be loyal to some and not loyal to others, that'll be known in the marketplace. And you're not going to grow very fast in your career. You have to be loyal. And if you get somebody that's really horrible and you just can't work for them, you leave. You don't tear them down, you leave. That's what you should do, in one person's opinion. That's a good question. Any other questions? I know I threw it a lot at you. There must be some thoughts that you have. Do you hear the same thing from everybody? Any other questions? Okay, Cliff?
How are the business, you come from a business world, and then you're in government. How do these two worlds, are they similar or different?
No, they're not similar. In some ways they're similar, in some ways they're not. You know, managing people, you know, every single person is different. But yet, people are people, and they're all in the image of God, and they all have the same flaws and strengths and tendencies. And managing people, the principles of managing people are the same, you know, no matter what organization I went to. You know, President Mullen asked me a similar question earlier today about, you know, what was the differences when you went from business to government to missionary work. And the challenge in missionary work is, in business, you have a pretty strong structure. You know, you have a CEO and a COO and vice presidents and managers, and it's a little bit like a military structure, you know, so that people have responsibility, people make decisions, and people execute. In a mission environment, missionaries, you know, everybody raises their own funds, so in a sense they're entrepreneurs. They get their calling from God, so they only have to report to Him. And so if you're a executive director of a mission agency, it's a little bit like herding cats. And you know, there's a much more premium on persuading and getting consensus on moving forward with anything than there is in the business world. In the business world, you know that you have the responsibility and you have the authority, so you can just move quickly. But in a missionary environment, things move slow. It's hard to bring everybody on board. You have to be very persuasive. And as I was telling President Mullen, the challenge sometimes is, to me, it's a God-directed enterprise. God is the enabler. God is in control of the results, but at the same time, we have a responsibility to move forward. And how do you have an organization that doesn't get too far ahead with human intervention and human wisdom, or just sit on your hands and wait for God to tell you what to do? So that balance sometimes is very hard, because you want to be God-centered, God-enabled, God-dependent, Scripture-focused, but you have to take action, and you have to move forward, and you have to make decisions, sometimes when not every single thing is clear from a scriptural standpoint. You understand what I'm saying there? That's the challenge. But it is different. We gave our first performance appraisals in our mission 2 years ago, and in a way that we really were supposed to, that the board told us to, but we never really did. So if you can imagine giving performance appraisals to a 40-year missionary and having their supervisor kind of tell them about their behavior and their objectives and how they met them for the first time in their career when they're 60 years old, it's kind of tough. But I think, you know, over time, performance appraisals are scriptural. I don't have time to go into it, but you know, we need to assess people, and we need to hold people accountable, right? And there's nothing unbiblical about that or ungodly about that. But oftentimes, in Christian environments, there's not that accountability, there's not that discipline, and there's a reluctance of people to review other people. You know, I found the mission, there was a reluctance for supervisors to actually supervise, and there was a reluctance of people to be supervised. You know, they like that independence. So that's probably the biggest change. Any other questions? Or Spencer?
Well, thank you, Joel, for your visit.